talking about that experience of being out of doors and the distractions, as a photographer, of course, light's very important to anything that I do. And it seems to me the closest intersection in my work as a photographer and you and the other plein air painters that I know is light. Because how do you deal with the fact that when you paint out of doors, the light changes so constantly, unless it's a sort of an overcast day with a uniform light? How do you deal with that?
I don't worry so much about that. I kind of go to a spot and I look around and I think everything deserves equal attention, but not everything deserves, you know, equal treatment on your canvas. And I think there's something special that you kind of, I don't decide what I want to paint. I don't paint with, I see something that grabs me and I know there's something that's drawing me there, but I don't paint thinking I'm going to capture that. I paint kind of like you're walking through the woods and you're just discovering as you go along, and you're kind of creating a landscape rather than capturing a landscape. So I don't mind adding different fleeting bits of light or things that happen during the day, because it's more of a little bit of time in space rather than a moment in space. So I don't worry too much about that. I mean, I know how things, you know, in 15 minutes, the light can change so dramatically, but I don't choose my, I keep my options open and I start working with the landscape till I'm just feeling it, and then something grabs me and that's what it's about. But a lot of it's the experience of painting for me, because the experience is so engaging, and I'm constantly putting, I'm making it as uncomfortable or as fresh of an experience for myself as I can. So I never use the same palette. I never use the same ground. I'm constantly switching it up, you know, and I feel too that with plein air, there's a really good thing, or anything you're painting, with painting something repeatedly and getting to know it so well that you can transcend that object and just see light and color and form. But there's also something with going someplace and, you know, getting a smack immediate reaction to that and painting that. So I think it's, you know, you got to do both.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really gives me a lot better way of grasping your work, because visually on the surface, it seems so unlike plein air painting in a more conventional way. So is it fair to say that you're painting more your emotions or your responses to a scene? You're not literally painting the scene.
I'm painting my experience with the scene. So I'm painting my interaction with the scene. It's not just my emotional response. I'm painting what I see, but I'm interpreting what I see and responding to it. I'm not, you know, just like when I paint animals or people, I'm not trying to capture that person or that animal. I'm trying to kind of release something different from it, or a moment that, you know, it's like a little suspension in space. It's just a little flickering moment. And it's, so yes, I am painting what I see. I'm just trying to translate it into marks, because it's more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So your creative enterprise is actually, to me, a fascinating one, because you are translating it, as you said, you're transforming something. And I think that's very obvious when one looks at your work. So this is a little bit maybe of an oddball question, and I understand if you don't want to tackle it, but you and I were talking about our mutual interest in Andrew Wyeth's watercolors. And we think of Andrew Wyeth, I think rightly, as somebody who's always very controlled. What is it about, well, I see Fred shaking his head, and we can parse that later, Fred, sometime, but what do you find about Andrew Wyeth's work that is interesting to you as a painter?
Oh, his watercolors, I think, are brilliant. And I think the use of edges, you know, it's very accurate perspective-wise, but you've got the temporal quality where you see some things immediately and other things take you a long time to find. And it's just got everything there. It's got the abstract mark making. It's kind of like Rembrandt's very abstract. He's very abstract, but it's anchored in the knowledge of how to represent something. And I think, you know, knowledge gives you a lot of options. So I think you should know everything you can possibly know, but you also should be like a net and contain what you need to contain and let the rest go. And I love the, you know, the tonal quality, the neutral quality.
Yeah.
And I love the accidents that happen, like the coffee cup on his paper, or, you know, the drips that happen, the aging. I love everything about those watercolors.
Yeah, yeah. That's wonderfully well said. Let's start to look at some of your work so we can apply a few of the things that you said to the actual work. Martha, if you want to pull up the first image.
Second image, maybe, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm going to preface this in an odd way, and I know it's going to sound self-serving, but I don't mean it to be that way. I say it because I have a question I want you to answer selfishly for me. I took a photograph not too long ago of these bridges at Havre de Grace, and I was very happy with the photograph, but it doesn't look anything like this. Can you say a little bit about how you put this together and structured it in such a bold way?
Well, I think there's something sublime about black and white, or something that's tonal and white. And I'm a very linear person, and I love to draw, and anything like bridges or something that provides that graphic quality of not only the bold, you know, grids, but you've got the soft water, you've got the air quality, you've got those thin line works. This was a plein air piece, and you know, I just was struck by the I was struck by the, you know, magnitude of that bridge. I just tried to get the feeling of motion, because the bridge isn't static, things are constantly happening around it. And that's kind of, and I was turning it into something calligraphic, because calligraphy is very important to me. And I was born in Korea. We were raised with a lot of Asian art around us, and all those pen and ink drawings and the gestural aspect. Like, I think everything comes down to gesture and essence. And I think I was trying to capture, or not capture, I was trying to release some sort of gestural quality of this bridge. So it's not trying to enclose it or dovetail it into a particular image. It's allowing it to be what it would like to be. And having a person look at it, it's not only about the bridge, but it's about the mark quality and the language of paint and surface. And I wanted to feel alive, because that's how it felt to me, if that answers it.
Yeah, very much. And that emphasis you place on mark making, I think is very, very clear here, and it's part of what makes your work exciting and interesting to look at. But the thing that's most intriguing to me is that a bridge is such a massive thing made out of these very heavy, strong materials. And you've captured that, I think. But also you have all of these gestures, these very energetic gestures. Were you aware of the fact, was that in any way intentional, that you're painting this thing made of concrete and steel, and there's this tension you've created between the marks on the surface and that solidity that I think it energizes the image? Were you aware of doing that? Was that intentional?
No, I never really paint. I really don't paint with intention. I kind of just paint, and I try to respond, and I try to shut off my thinking, and you know, I can come back to it after I'm done in an analytical way. As I'm going along, I can keep stopping, but no, I'm just trying to respond to what I'm seeing. And as I look at different parts of the bridge, different parts interest me, but of course, you can't have everything. And so, no, I don't paint with an intention like that.
Okay. Let's see the next image, please, Martha. Now, this is that you have a wonderful sense of color, and it's a nice juxtaposition to the basically monochromatic image that we looked at before. And now I want to ask you to talk about it a little bit based on your connection to Chester Springs and the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. Does this atmospheric effect, this coloristic effect, have anything to do with your training at the Pennsylvania Academy and its tradition of painting nature?
I think it probably has everything to do with Pennsylvania Academy, because I learned so much there, and there are so many different teachers. There's a wealth of knowledge, and you kind of pick and choose, but it's, you grow from there, of course, but I think I got very grounded into finding what is important to me when I was there, and to following committing myself, whether it's right or wrong, to what I believe. And I don't know really how to answer that question. I think it has everything to do with the academy, but it also has to do with growth after the academy. I mean, just like you're not the same at 5 as you are at 50. It's growth after the academy, but the academy was amazing experience, and I couldn't say enough good things about the academy.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that in a pedantic way, because I wrote my dissertation about the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts.
And I think even if you're painting abstractly, you're abstractly or representationally, you're dealing with the same formal elements of shape, mark making, color. You're dealing with the same elements. You're just coming at it through the back door.
Yeah. Were there any of the artists that are historically associated with the academy, or that you actually were able to study with, that made a big impact on you?
Yeah, there were many, but Patrick Connors was a big influence on me, and he was an influence on me one way because he kind of taught me to teach yourself how to paint by following the Aikens tradition of going home and doing, because I had a very hard time learning how to paint. I mean, it was really hard. So that's one reason why I like teaching, is I like trying to help other people, make it a little easier for other people than it was for me. But he suggested doing these 30-minute studies that Aikens used to do, going home, and I did hundreds and hundreds because I was just dogged. And one of my teachers said to me, you cannot go after this with a 2x4, just relax and let some of it, come to you. But, it teaches you kind of to take the bull by your own horns. And same thing with Nicolaides, that book, Natural Way to Draw. You have to do the work on your own, but you're teaching yourself. But Stan Mers was a huge influence. I mean, there were so many, Jan Baltel, there were so many. But Stan Mers was a real mentor for me.
Well, let's apply what you were just saying a little bit to this image. You called it magic hour.
Oh, it is the magic hour. That's what happens when that light happens at whatever, depending on the season, whatever 5, 6 o'clock, when that light just gets, it's actually off a photograph, and the photograph looks nothing like it. But I see so much atmosphere because I live in the country and I have a panoramic view, a huge vista on a farm, and I have horses and things like that. They're not mine. But I can look out on that, and I'm constantly looking at clouds and constantly looking at, so it's, I can't remember the question, but maybe I answered it, maybe I didn't.
No, you did answer it, but more specifically now, the magic hour, almost every painter or photographer, has heard the term and has been encouraged to, try to take advantage of that wonderful light. And this isn't exactly the light that I think I've ever been fortunate enough to see, but it's still, it's kind of like mother of pearl. It glows. It has this subtle energy. How did you do that?
I paint with a lot of layers. I think it's hard. I don't think you can substitute for complexity of layering and layering. So I use a lot of transparencies. I use a lot of very thin layers, and I keep going after it, and it morphs completely during the painting. I mean, I paint on its side, I paint it upside down. I'll just keep turning it around and around, and I'm just trying to translate that feeling into marks, or that vision into marks. And it's a lot of different layers. It's using the playing off different whites, translucent colors, different mark making tools, because you can always like you, and when I'm stuck in a painting, you can, someone told me this once, you can't change what's in your head, but you can change the tool you're using. And so I'm constantly changing my tools and trying to change the light I'm working in and everything else so that I try to just take myself off balance. And then, you know, it's all this scraping off and getting, it's a disaster and everything else, but then suddenly there's that magic aha moment, and it's starting to, and it works. And that's what I'm looking for.
And that's when you know the painting's finished, or you know that you're
No, I never know when it's finished. I ruin so many paintings. This one this is just one that didn't happen to go down that trail, but no, I never know when it's finished.
Yeah. You mentioned that this is, you used a photograph in creating this. Is that something that you typically do, or is that just something that worked in this instance?
I use plenty of photographs. It's they're points of information. I don't copy them. I can composite 4 or 5 together. If I'm painting an animal, I can use, you know, it's like Muybridge's studies were really big for me, because you've got Edward Muybridge, you've got all these different clips of animals, and each little instant of how it's moving provides a different point of information. So I use a ton of images. I just don't stick to what's on the paper.
Yeah.
I look for things, just like if I'm doing an abstract painting, I always use something like a rock. It could be a rock, it could be a leaf, anything to see the irregularity of nature and the surprises that happen, because I don't think we can think of those on our own.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by the fact that you use the word irregularity, because Muybridge's photographs are intended to be so precise, but they're really irregular. When you look at a long strip of one of the animals or the humans moving, they're very irregular, more than they are regular. The regularity was the structure that he applied to making them, not, I don't think, what he produced.
Exactly. Plus the older film. And so you lose images and find them. And I apply the same thing with the animals, or the patterning I use, like with the leopards you use, the spots dissolve, the bars dissolve, and they come back. It's like edges. There's so much I think you can learn from him.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really an interesting juncture between you as a painter and a photographer like Muybridge, and just the way that you've explained your use of photography. So that's very interesting. Next image, please, Martha. It shocked me when I went to your website.
Why?
And I saw these spoons and some of the other objects that you paint. I don't know. I had gone through a couple of your portfolios, you know, and I was saying, okay, you know, this makes sense to me. And then, I mean, I love this. This is a wonderful painting. But tell us all a little bit about your interest in still life, and how does it sort of fit into your larger scope of work?
I'm interested. I mean, I'm fascinated. Anything, you know, I'm fascinated by a lot of things. Anything is interesting the more you dive into it. And these are actually my mother-in-law's little silver spoons. And my husband has them, and I took them to paint, and each one has a little gesture of its own. It holds, it's something I try to talk to my student painters about, or my painters about, is repetition without redundancy. So I oftentimes will paint 3 of the same thing next to each other. But each one has its own personality, 3 very similar things, because so many times people don't take the time to really look and respond to what they're seeing. They just paint what they think is in front of them. So these spoons, you know, just like desserts or people or anything else, they have all these beautiful edges, and the light glints on them in different ways. And this was actually I have this thing we call my painters and I call it like the paintings with the luminous blacks, the story of the luminous blacks. And so we, you know, create these blacks with all these transparent colors and black, and this is what that was made with. It was just showing that you could have a huge range of black in one painting.
Yeah. Well, and I was intrigued and am intrigued by the bowls of the spoons, and how you have sort of captured these different colors and the different forms that maybe were reflections of what was around you at the time. But whatever it is, it's so interesting as a visual experience to delve into. Are they from a silver set? Are they really identical?
My mother-in-law collected silver spoons, so they're just from all over the place. And It wouldn't matter if it's from a set or not. I think light hits things differently,
Yeah.
and everything does, depending on what you're looking at, everything has a different personality. But what you said, it's always a visual experience. Anything can be a visual experience.
Yeah, yeah. Let's take a little digression for a moment with your teaching. Teaching is something that you do regularly, and of course, not all of the painters do that. And I just wondered if you'd share a little of your experience with COVID and how you're continuing to teach when you can't gather groups of people together.
Well, I've taught for maybe 15, 16 years at Wayne Art Center. I teach privately too, and I teach at Chester Springs. And I think we've developed such a, I don't know, such a community there, and such a great group of people I work with, that we kind of needed to see each other. You know, like I really missed them. So we started these informal groups, and then we continue this small class via Zoom. A lot of people don't want to Zoom because they have to Zoom for work also, but a small group of us keep it going. And then I still teach plein air at my where I live at the farm, or I'll teach it someplace else, because you can still keep your distance from people. Yeah. But I just think it's necessary, because we exchange ideas, and you know, it's, for me, they're just as stimulating for me as hopefully I might be for them, and we all learn from each other, and it's a really good thing.
When you Zoom, do you do it like we're doing it, where everybody is on the screen simultaneously, or do you do it sort of one-on-one at some point through the session?
If it's a private lesson, I do it one-on-one. If it's with my group, it's a small group. I don't want to have a huge group because it gets too fractured. So we go through each person. Each person can have whatever they want to say, or we critique. It's very hands-on, and it's very demo. We do demos, and we discuss things. We talk about things. That's all. We go very intensely into a single painting to learn about it. That's all.
Well, that's good to know that Zoom is able to work, at least for you and your group, even for teaching art at this time, sort of keeping things moving along.
Yeah.
Speaking of moving along, let's see the next slide. This surprised me as much as the spoons, maybe even more, because there's something about the presence of that tiger sort of coming out of the darkness. Are animals a regular subject for you?
Yes, I love animals, absolutely love animals. And you know, aside from the fact I love them, you know, there's this formal aspect where I'm very drawn by patterning, and I didn't want it to be a portrait of the tiger, so I didn't want his eyes open, because it's just too typical. And I wanted it kind of, it's sort of like, and this sounds silly, it's for me, it's sort of like a healing thing for the tiger, because I'd read some story about poachers or something. Mm-hmm. And so it was more me putting him in an environment with his eyes closed, where he's quiet and peaceful, and things are okay with him. So it's sort of a healing thing for him. I know it just sounds ridiculous to say that, but this is how I think sometimes when I paint the animals.
So there was no tiger. You weren't at the zoo.
Well, I've painted tigers drawn from the zoo for so long, and I drew tigers for so long, and African wild dogs, that it's sort of in my, and I've been around all this age, it's sort of in my blood, the tigers.
Yeah. How about little dogs?
Well, little dogs, big dogs, cats, yes. But so no, it's more like capturing a moment, like a little space and time where there's peace. That's really what it was about.
To me, the tiger is emerging out of what could be a cave, a pool of
Water.
And so the emerging is something that you intended to be part of, or you is part of this. I'm not imagining it.
It's not that emerging is part of it, but water is calming, and I love water and being in water. So it's just a peaceful place to be.
Well, that's a different way of looking at tigers, which of course inspire fear in some people and seem beautiful to others. So that's a very interesting approach, and it's big.
It's big. I paint large, and I paint very small too. I just do I keep changing it, because I don't want to get stuck in a routine. So okay. I paint 4x4, and I paint 40x60, 40x70. So I change my medium too. I do watercolor, gouache, charcoal, everything. I might not be as good in things, but I think it keeps your fluidity and your ability to keep to see what you see, to translate that through your body to your hands without thinking as much.
Yeah, yeah. I think we have one more. Is it just one more? No, but we have two more. This and one more.
Okay, this was just something I got an award for at Plein Annapolis the first year I attended. It was just it's called Choppy Waters. It was the first day of the first event I went to, and it was pouring rain. It was freezing cold. I'd forgotten, and my shoes were soaked, and I just, was trying to paint how that felt.
I think you did a good job. Well, let's look at the last one, which I think you won a very significant prize for, and justifiably. The White House, and this is David Diaz's prize for the best use of light. Can you start by telling me where you were when you painted this? And I think I and some of the others listening know Annapolis well enough that it'll help us think about what it is you did in transforming your material into this striking image.
Well, I have no idea because I don't know Annapolis. That I just go places. I don't think about where I am. It's this small building, and it comes off that circle where, I don't know, people park, and it's near the Iron Rooster.
Okay.
Across the street. And yeah, it wasn't any kind of location in particular. It was a little house where the light was hitting it.
Yeah.
Beautiful way against all the other houses, and it wasn't a landmark or something like that. It just was a little house. And the prize was very special to me because I did get to meet David's wife, and so that was really special getting that prize. She had given me a 4-leaf clover, and so that's very special to me, and that painting's special.
She gave you a 4-leaf clover before you painted
4-leaf clover because I absolutely demanded it, because she gave it to several other people. She collected them and she would find them, and so I please. So she gave it to me, and best of luck with everything. And then
wow,
last time I saw her.
That's a special story, a special memory for you, for Paint Annapolis then, I guess.
Yeah.
Does the red, what was it that made you put the red accent there, which adds so much more energy to the composition? I think
it was a red door. Are you talking about the thing in the middle?
Yeah.
That's the red door. It was a red door.
Now I'm pretty sure I know where you were.
Doesn't it look like a door to you?
No.
Okay, it's a door.
It looks like a person to me.
Oh, no. It's a door.
You said no emphatically. And I want to play with that just for a minute.
It's about the house, not a person. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So whenever you release one of your works to the public, you never know how somebody's going to respond. Does it bother you that I thought it was a person?
No, I don't care. I'd rather have my works open-ended and ambiguous and interpreted in multiple ways rather than have them dovetail into one. This is what it is, and that's what it is. I'd rather have someone be able to look at it and be able to think different things.
Well, good. Thank you.
So it's a red person, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, that was the last of the slides, and I thought it was important to include that, not only because it's a very striking painting, wonderful image itself, but because you won the prize, and David was part of establishing that prize for Paint Annapolis and all of that. So I think now we have 20 or so minutes. We can open it up for questions, and Martha will be the moderator to sort of, say you're next, et cetera, and some ground rules.
Yes, so if anyone would like to ask a question, you're welcome to type it out in the chat function and I will read it off. Otherwise, you're also welcome to say it yourself. There is a reaction tab at the bottom of your screen. Just select any of those and we'll come get you. Either that or you can physically raise your hands, and we'll try and just keep an orderly system so we're not all talking over each other.
Okay, who's first?
Carolyn? Could you please click the unmute button that I just sent you?
The painting is Fleet and Cornhill Streets.
I'm sorry?
So,
The last painting is Fleet and Cornhill Streets,
Oh, thank you. Okay.
if you need to know. I've
okay.
been there,
Anyone
done that. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Actually, I think it's Pinckney Street, by the way. It's a tobacco place that Historic Annapolis owns.
That's what I thought it was, but I think I could imagine it being the other two, Bob.
I think, yeah, I don't know, but I think that it's someplace that Historic Annapolis owns. I don't think people live there.
It's right across from the Red Rooster, the Iron Rooster.
Rooster, yeah.
Yeah, Bob's on it.
Yeah.
He's our navigator for the day.
We have a comment from Deborah Comelin who says, have to say that I have never seen plein air painting like this. It's refreshing. So that's very nice.
Thank you very much.
And we also have a question from Ken who says, were you always an artist?
Yes. Who was asking this?
Ken, and I think it might be Ken Carlick, who is another Paint Annapolis regular,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. I can't see where he is.
I've done many different things, but yes, I've always been an artist. Life sometimes takes you in different directions, but yes, I've always been an artist.
Martha, do you have any questions? Martha often asks excellent questions.
I know she does.
I had a long day today moving racks from here at Circle Gallery to set up our secondary gallery for Paint Annapolis, and I'm very tired. So I don't think I have a fun question about like Russian literature this time.
Yeah.
We do have a question from CJ Healy. If you'd like, you can unmute yourself now.
Hi, Georganna.
Hi, Constance.
It's great to see you on. My question is, when you're going to an event like the one that's coming up, do you already know where you're going to paint? Or do you spend a long time driving around looking? Do you go down scouting ahead early? How does that work?
I have no idea what I'm going to paint. I'm just going to drive around when I get there, and then something grabs you. For me, I don't want to plan it because then I'm going to have too much pressure on myself. I want to find it and discover it. And if I discover it ahead of time, then I've already kind of preconceived what I'm going to paint. A lot of times, even when I'm teaching, if I share an image that I really want to paint, and then I have to work through my students' problems with it, then I've already worked out the painting and I won't be able to paint it. So no, it's got to be a surprise.
Interesting. Thanks.
We have another question from Ken who asks, what's next in store for you?
I don't know. I don't just keep on painting, right?
And then we have two comments. Barbara Stubbs says that the looseness is very refreshing in your work. And Lynn Mehta says, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, Lynn, thank you. I love Lynn's work.
Yeah, Lynn's a very fine painter too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we must have covered ground pretty thoroughly then if there aren't more questions. I mean, I think your work is fascinating. I could look at it for quite a long time. So anybody else? If not, Julius?
I have a question.
Julius.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, I thought you were going to ask a question.
Oh, I was, but I thought someone else was going to do it. My question is, how has your teaching and interaction with students affected your own artistic vision and the artistic production?
It's completely beneficial in every way, because I think not only do you learn the more visual problems you come across, I think the better and more quickly reflexive of a painter you're going to be. And I think I love helping people learn to see things. And I think that my students generate a lot of ideas. They're all very, they're good painters on their own, whether they're inexperienced or not. Inexperienced painters have that whole fresh vision. So no matter the level, I think they always add something to what I'm doing, and they energize me. I mean, I learn a lot from them because everybody has their own marks and their own way of doing things. And I think there's a lot to be learned from people that don't know how to paint, and there's a lot to be learned from people that do. I think it's depending on what you're looking to find, how sensitive you are to what's coming in. Someone that doesn't know how to paint, or a child, is going to do things that are really surprising and exceptional. And so I think it's just being open to that. But
Sounds like you were really made to be a teacher too.
I love teaching. I really love teaching.
Yeah.
And I love the interaction. It's all good. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's been a, oh, wait a minute. I see Joe.
Yes. Yeah, I have a couple of comments. One is you're a wonderful communicator. And that is, besides the fact that you have such great vision of what you want to communicate, but you communicate very well. But one question I have of you, and one thing I love about your work, is that it has a muddiness and an earthiness, and then it has a very fresh, pure color aspect. How do you accomplish that in your work? Do you get to a place where it's
muddiness?
Wonderful. Yes, it's wonderful mixed colors that are very, complex colors. And yet then at the end, you have these elements that are so pure. And I was just wondering, how do you get to that place where you are ready to apply those finishing?
I think that I always start with a different palette. I never use the same colors next to each other. I never use warm, cool, or red, yellow, blue. I mean, there's red, yellow, blue on there someplace, but I constantly change the palette because I think that, I know there's the benefit to knowing what colors where and everything else, but I think that you might make a surprising color that you'd never have thought of making by putting all these strange colors together. So why not hazard a chance? And it's a gamble, and sure, I make awful paintings sometimes, but we all do. And I could make awful paintings by trying to make good paintings all the time, but it's just, and then at the end I get more, once I get towards whatever it's going to become, then I can choose more specifically the colors I use. So initially it's haphazard, and then it becomes very, I clean up the palette and go into it with a little more intention.
Well, it works very well.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, one more question, please.
I have a question. Many times people that are artists, the subject reaches out to the artist, and I think that's what you do. Others, the artist controls the subject, and I'm really with you. I think that in our work, what we need to do is to see what the subject is and then try to interpret that. And it may change, and it may not work, but the idea is for that to happen rather than trying to control what you're painting.
Yes, and it's the process, and we all, the painting can be such an exciting experience, but if you have a formula and you're always doing the same thing, I think you're really missing out. You're cheating yourself of what you might discover on your own.
Yep. Okay, then. Well, thank you all for tuning in. And Georganna, thank you for being a wonderful guest and a wonderful painter. And I look forward to see what you do in Paint Annapolis next week. And thanks to Joanne and Martha for making this all work so smoothly.